What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to Your Ex-Drinking Buddy. My name is Brennan Tassif. I'll be your host. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com/merch-store. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. We'll put the shorts up there, the full video, the whole thing. Thank you so much for listening. I love it. I hope you love it. Subscribe on Patreon, too. We do bonus episodes. I do Tales from the Restaurant, where I talk about celebrities I've waited on and whether they're assholes or not, which is super fun. Also, we do a pre-show banter for my other show, Cheers from the Press Box with Joe Dorville. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on over there, too. Make sure you just subscribe everywhere, just all over the place. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're not leaving the mean comments, thank you for that. Maybe leave a couple nice ones.
Grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but it's still one of my favorite things to do, hang out with a guest and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Peter Guarraci.
Oh, my God. Thank you for having me. That's the nicest intro I've ever gotten on a podcast.
Oh, really?
Thank you so much. I mean, that's the most,
it's the most
intense intro I've ever gotten on a podcast.
That was your name. It's just... Before we get too far in anything, plug everything up front. Social media, any shows. This will come out in 2 weeks. So any shows you have coming out?
So I'm the Guarraci on social media. On Instagram. I'm Guarraci on Twitter. I should have been the Guarraci on Twitter, but I created my Twitter account wrongly. And I don't want to change.
Once you have it, you can't change.
And then also too, like people are like, "Oh, you should make it like Peter is comedian." I'm like, I fucking, you know what? I like Arnold Schwarzenegger became a star as Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm gonna be a fucking star as Peter Guarraci. So figure out how to spell my last name.
Yeah.
I have a show that hopefully will be a monthly by this point when this comes out in Elizabeth, New Jersey called Calamari Comedy. It's the fourth Thursday of every month. And then I'm always just doing stand-up, acting, doing whatever, anywhere you can find me.
Yeah, you act.
Yeah, I'm an actor. I was an actor first.
Yeah. So let's get, because the listeners know, I ask the guests the same thing every time. I always have artists on, so I'm always so fascinated, especially before the mics went on, we were talking about how you come from a family of teachers, you almost did that, but then you got into acting. I'm fascinated how people find their way down these rabbit holes. So you started acting first. What happened? How did you even get into that?
This is a long, I could do the really long version of this story. So I was a kid, and I was, it's weird because I'm the first of four kids. I'm the oldest of four. I'm also the first like American grandchild on both sides of my family.
Oh, really?
So my family, they're all from Sicily. My dad came here at 19. My mom was born here, but her parents were Sicilian. Like I think my grandmother was pregnant with my mom when she got here.
Okay.
So I grew up, and it was like you're supposed to be, you know, like doctor, lawyer, like accountant is like okay, teacher's like okay, and I was just like an artistic kid. I was just like a weird. Kid, and you're not supposed to do that. No. And I was always.
My grandparents are immigrants too.
Yeah.
I've heard.
I remember like one day I made like a life-size scarecrow in the house. Like we had a jack-o'-lantern, and I just built a scarecrow, and then like my siblings
How old are you?
I was like 7 or 8, and my siblings got involved, and they started, and then my mom took a bunch of pictures. There was probably photos somewhere of this, and so I was always drawing. I was always making stuff. And the funny thing is, I was a very shy kid. I was very, very shy, and people don't believe that. And what I realized is, the way to get over being shy is acting the exact opposite of how a shy person would act. So I feel like sometimes now they say like extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
Like I'm somebody who I can hold a room, I can talk to people, but I do it with intention. It's not my natural, like my girlfriend says, like she's like mostly just like moody around the house and quiet. Like I'm not like going around like trying to be like entertaining. But I learned how to be the guy that, you know.
You're an extroverted introvert.
Does that. So I remember being very introverted as a kid. I went to gifted and talented school, nerd school.
This guy.
And they put me in, so they had like different groups, and they put me in the phys ed group, which I didn't belong in because there wasn't a slot in anywhere else when I applied that year. Because I went to school, I was inner city, rough school, so like.
Where did you grow up?
Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Okay.
So like you don't go like the public schools in Elizabeth are. I mean, now I think they're okay, but at the time they were like a war zone.
Yeah.
And so you went to either Catholic school or you went to like, so I basically placed in like a magnet school.
Okay.
And I remember I was very shy. There was a girl named Alexandra I had a crush on, but I didn't want to talk to her because I was scared. And I decided to just do stand-up at the talent show. I don't know where this inclination came from. And it's funny because like a lot of
this
this
is
stuff,
elementary school?
This is like 8 years old.
Wow.
And I had an old joke book, and I literally took every joke out of the joke book, except for one joke that I wrote. And to this day, I can't figure out how I did this. I'm in front of the whole school. Everyone's sitting Indian style in the gym, watching me do stand-up. And the biggest laugh I got, and I just said, this is like 89. This is like 88, 89. And I'm like, who here likes Bob Hope? I said this to a group of fucking 8-year-olds. And, kids will just raise their hand
because they want to be a part.
And I literally just went, and I turned my back to them, and I got a big laugh. And to this day, I don't know where I got that from, but that was me. Like, that was my personality. That was my persona. And I remember, like, a day later, this girl Alexandra was like, you were really funny. And I was like, and so I learned the power of stand-up. I didn't do it again for fucking 20-something years. But I would kind of, I remember, I blame my mom for this. There's two things I'm kidding, but I kind of blame my mom for like not being a child actor, because the next year, the teacher who was like the performing arts teacher in the school wanted to move me to the performing arts group at the school.
Okay.
She goes, I want Peter in this group. And then we moved to a farm for 6th grade. So then we left that. I had to like relearn, and that's another thing. I was always like, I was like the inner city kid now, like living in the middle in like the woods. I had an accent, like I was just like a weird kid because I just was, and I was weird in the city too. I was getting beat up in the city, and then I just got beat up by fucking country kids
That's a hard transition to go from the city to the farm.
12 years old is the last year of grade school. God. So all these kids have been together since kindergarten. Now I'm the new kid, and I'm also like weird and fucking quirky, whatever. So in 6th grade, I could still sing at that time. The chorus teacher wanted me to audition because the high school was doing The Music Man.
Okay.
And there's a kid in that. So she wanted me to send me as a 12-year-old to be in like the high school play. And like I was like her pick to do that. And we happened to go to Disney World when the audition was. Like my mom's like, well, we already planned this trip for Disney World. So I never did that.
Your mom just coming off the top rope twice.
The funny thing is, and I say this with like my parents, like they're like my parents actually encouraged me to be an artist. Yeah. And a joke I say is like, what, like since when do like immigrants encourage their kids to be art? Like if my dad had been a little harder on me, like I'd be the funniest doctor in the you know what I mean? Like I could have been like, oh, Dr. Guarraci's hilarious. He's getting $500,000 a year doing surgery. But they actually were like they were kind of into
dreams,
it. Yeah, they were into it, which is really cool. But so that's why I didn't become a child actor. And then I kind of kicked around for a long time. And I'm trying to make this as but I would do things here and there. Like they would always have musicals in my high school. The one time they had a straight play, I was like the star of the straight play.
Oh, okay.
But there was never any kind of momentum or whatever. And then in college, I tried out for a couple of things, and they did this like sort of organic Curse of the Starving Class is a Sam Shepard play. Okay. And they did it like...
What college did you go to?
I went to William & Mary.
Okay.
It's great. A ton of comedians came out of there, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle Wolf went there. Jon Stewart went there. Glenn Close. Like a lot of great actors.
That's
crazy. Thomas Jefferson.
My cousin. Shout out Tom.
Yeah.
He's a comic
big
in Colorado.
And so the one time they did this sort of weird off the beaten path where they did it, like there was a coffee house at the school that the students ran, but it was in like a house. It was like a mansion off campus. So we did the play organically in the house. And that was like a really cool experience. But again, I just kind of always just sort of drifted away from it.
So you would like try it and then kind of like...
And I would be... well, the thing is like nothing ever... And this is going to continue into like this last couple of years. It's like... you know the story where people are like, oh, I met the famous person and they put me in the... You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I got in an Uber and fucking Tom Hanks was in there and he put me in his movie.
Some of those stories are why I'm like plugging along.
So I have like 10 of those stories where I met the famous person and then nothing in my life happened. Yep. Like nothing changed. Nothing exciting ever happened.
Almost the entire like ethos. I do a thing on Patreon called Tales from the Restaurant because I've worked in nicer restaurants. So the whole ethos is I've met so many famous people. Nothing from it. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
I would say, like, it's funny because with comedy, the cool thing about the thing that's cooler about comedy than acting is I think you're always one degree of separation from your heroes
Yeah.
in comedy. Like if I do a movie and Tom Cruise is the star of the movie, I'm not having lunch with Tom Cruise. But if I could be on a show and just in the green room with Bill Burr. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I am like one degree of separation from everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I'm
and that's I don't mean to interrupt, but that is an interesting thing because I have had a guest on, Matthew Fagerberg, very good actor. He talks about exactly that. He acts. That's what he does. And he did The Equalizer.
Oh,
and he
wow.
was like, boy, oh boy, the movie with Denzel that
Yeah.
started that whole franchise. He was in that movie. And he's playing a bartender, doing his whole thing. There's a stand-in the whole time. He said he turned around to like reset. And then when he, like not even thinking anything, when he turned back around, Denzel was sitting there.
Yeah.
Denzel said his one line. He said his one line. Denzel got up, walked out. And that was it.
It's
but to
amazing.
your point, it's like, and then they cut it from the movie. So like nobody even knows that happened except him.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's like he wasn't like having lunch with Denzel Washington. He's in a movie, in a scene with him. They never said more than the lines that were scripted to each other.
Yeah, and most of the comics are cool enough that they remember where they were, and they
Yeah.
don't. I don't think I've really been big timed by any comics. Like every comic is just kind of like everyone just wants to get on stage. They just want
Yeah.
to do the same thing that we're doing. They're just doing it at a different level that we're doing. But
Start a podcast. You'll get big timed.
yeah, so I so did that play in college, and then again I was kind of kicked around a lot after college. My 20s, I was like I drove cross country. I did all this stuff. I ended up falling in love with this girl who had a restaurant, and I thought this is how I got to New York too. Her and her dad owned a restaurant in my town. Her father knew my father, and I thought we were gonna like get married and like run restaurants
Yeah.
together. And we ended up breaking up. It ended up being really ugly, and I was like really kind of in a down place in my life. And it happened to be my 5-year reunion for college.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go. I was like, what am I going to do? Like everyone I know is like doing finance and like making money or consulting, whatever. And I'm like, what am I going to tell them? I'm living in my parents' house. I don't have a job. I just broke up with my girlfriend. So I end up going to William and Mary. And there was this girl, Megan Malloy.
So you ended up going. Why did you end up going?
I was like, because I used to fear of missing out. I never wanted to miss a party.
Yeah.
I was like, something might happen. It might be cool to just go. So I had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So I go there. I run into this girl, Megan Malloy. I knew she was an actress in L.A. The interesting thing is she was in that play with me, Curse of the Starving Class.
Okay.
And I always had kind of a crush on her, and I just see her in like one of the bars we hang out, and she just goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" She goes, "I always wondered what you were doing if you were acting." And I go, "What?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm in LA. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not like pie in the sky. Like this is a really hard life, but this is really what I think you should be doing." And I go, "What?" She goes, "Trust me." She goes, "I don't mean like star of the school play. Like I mean like a real actor."
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, "What?" And I went back to like an old girlfriend of mine who I was still friends with, who I'm still friends with to this day. And I was like, "You know what this girl just said to me?" She goes, she thinks I should be an actor. She goes, "Yeah, you're really good. This is what you should do." And I was like, "What?"
So it never dawned. You never, because
I
you like were
always
doing plays and stuff, but it never like you never thought like let's go do it.
I never thought it was a real thing
Yeah.
to do. And I sometimes like I try not to like live in regret, but like if I go back and I think like again, it's like if we hadn't gone to Disney World, like
Yeah.
how my life, and it's like silly, but it is true. Like people's lives take those turns. So I went back to New York. I got a job waiting tables in the city, and I started taking improv classes at the Pit. I literally Googled improv. For whatever reason, I thought improv was the place to
Yeah.
start. So I Google improv, and the Pit is the first thing that comes up. And I started taking classes there, and it was amazing. I still highly recommend people go to the Pit. Of all the places, like UCB to me feels like a comedy factory.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's not this many funny people in the world. Like,
I mean, I love the Pit. I have a good buddy of mine who's been on the show, John Moreno. He does all his one-man shows or all his like sketch shows at the Pit.
I was at the
He
Pit
in-
when it was
yeah.
the old, like above the subway.
Yeah, he talks
sandwich.
about the Pit back in
Yeah.
those days when it was like.
So being at the Pit, I ended up taking like a side class, and someone goes, "Hey, if you're serious about acting, you should study with my acting teacher, Maggie Flanagan."
Okay.
So then who was like, her studio was 2 blocks away. So I did a 2-year like acting conservatory at Maggie Flanagan. And then it was like, I was told like, "Oh, you're talented, you're good, you're going to work." And then I get out of acting school and like nobody cares. Like, and again, all these stories where it's like, I meet a manager and they're like, "You're going to email me," and then nothing. They don't even like people that and it's funny because like the thing about Hollywood that I've heard and seen firsthand is no one calls you up and goes like, listen, it's not going to work out. Like you just never
No,
hear from them ever again.
It's so interesting. I've submitted to 4 festivals in the last year. I've only heard back from one of them to be like either because some of them they haven't even like finalized yet, so I don't know if I made it or not. But it's so weird to like submit something and then just be like, all right, cool. Like, I guess I'll never, if I don't make it, I guess I'll just never hear about it.
Acting is like that now. It's like now you send self-tapes and you just don't hear.
Because it's not even in the room anymore.
I know. I had to actually, not to get ahead, but like I've been sending in tapes and like I had one opportunity to go do it live. And I was like, I'm good in the room. I'm a comic. I want to be in the room. I want to talk to people and see people.
Well, I hear stories from comics, like on podcasts and stuff, how they got like commercial agents and then they would know the casting director from all these separate auditions from constantly going there. So then they would just be like, yeah, we like you. You're funny. We'll put you in this. And it's like, that doesn't happen anymore because it's all tapes.
Yeah, you don't get to see people. But they do, like, I do get auditions from the same people again. So they are, you do know that
watching.
You feel like it's into the abyss, but like, that's another thing too. It's like, you get to a certain point where you got to trust that other people are looking out for you too. Like people are seeing stuff, even if they're not. My thing too is like I hate social media and I don't feel I'm good at it, but people will come up to me and be like, hey, I really like that thing you put on. I'm like, oh, thank you for doing this in a way that doesn't help me at all. Because if you had actually liked it and shared it, Instagram might care about me, but like you're telling me in person is not going to help me in any
Happens
way.
to me all the time with coworkers.
I literally
that was so funny.
People will literally private message me like, "Oh, that's really funny." I'm like, I guess you don't want strangers to know that you're interested in this. Like, you don't want anyone to know that you support me in any way possible. But to get back to the acting story, I found Maggie Flanagan, started training in Meisner, and it was fucking intense. It is leading to I started gambling at this time because what I think happened was I grew up in a family of card players.
Okay, so that's what, before we get too far into the story, that's what I wanted to like make sure the audience was all on board. You were not like a drinker or a drug guy.
No, never.
You were a big gambler.
So I've never been, I mean, I could take or leave alcohol. I've never done any drugs. I did an edible once and all I did was get chattier. And I'm like, I don't need a drug to do that. I'm already talking too much.
I talk a lot.
So I grew up in a family like playing cards was, after Thanksgiving dinner, they would play for nickels and dimes. And then my father, it's funny, my father comes from a little town called Ribera, Sicily, but there's people from Ribera all over the world. Like they went wherever the work was.
Yeah.
So in Elizabeth, New Jersey, there's a community and they have a Ribera club. Where the men go and play cards and hang out.
This is a small town in Italy, and they happen to have a club.
It's like a town of like 20,000 people, and and literally they know Elizabeth, New Jersey, like it's L.A. or New York City, because everyone has family in Elizabeth. But they're also like, we have relatives in Buenos Aires, Toronto, like California. Like,
so you're everywhere,
anywhere there was work. These guys, these men, like people in my family, like they built the Newark airport, they built the Exxon like refinery in Jersey.
Oh shit!
Like all these like huge things. These guys came over to do all this work, and so at this men's club, these guys, they love to play cards, and I started hanging out there. I was living in my grandmother's house because I was commuting to the city every day, and I think what happened was when I finally discovered like Meisner and acting training, all that stuff. Like for the first time in my life, I finally found like I felt like I found what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it scared the shit out of me because I could always kind of figure things out and kind of finagle things, but I never really cared, and I would get good at something and I'd just get bored with it. And for the first time in my life, I was like confronted with the thing. Like I really felt like, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
How old are you at this point?
I'm like 28.
Yeah.
And it scared me, and I did it like. And the thing that still keeps me interested in comedy and acting to this day, I think, is like I feel like you never master it.
Yeah.
Like I think there's certain things that you just kind of get good at and you can coast. I to this day don't feel like I know how to write a joke.
Well, and there's sometimes you'll feel you're in a position to where like you'll have a couple good sets, and for me, I'll have a couple good sets in a row, and I'm like, dude, this is a tight 10. Like I'm good.
Dude, I was ready to quit comedy a week ago.
And you go up and bomb, and you're like, God damn it!
I had a mediocre set a week ago, and I'm like, it might be over. I might be done. And then you have a good set like the next one, and you're like, I'm the greatest comedian who's ever lived. Why do people not realize?
This literally just happened last month. I had a set where I was like, I'm gonna quit. Like I was talking to Tracy, my girlfriend, and I was like, I don't know. I'm 36. Like I've been plugging away at this for a long time. Like maybe I just don't have it. And she goes, was the set that bad? And I was like, yeah. And then literally the next night, a friend of mine I went just to support, and they're like, hey, you want to jump up and do 5? And I did, and I crushed. And I was like, never mind. I'm the greatest.
Yeah. But so I started gambling, and it was kind of a way to just kind of cope with everything.
And is this at the club? Is this at the club?
So I started playing. They would have poker tournaments, so I started playing Texas Hold'em.
Okay.
These guys are like my father's friends, and they just
like Uncle Vinny. And
there's
Uncle
a lot
Joey
of Goombas in a back room.
Hey,
they're all smoking cigarettes, and I'm like commuting to the city and they're like Peter the actor, like they were really like breaking my balls and all that stuff, and I just got caught up, and the next thing I discovered, like, underground poker rooms and Atlantic City. It's funny, when I was 21, my dad took me to Vegas because he's like, "Oh, you're 21, we're gonna go to Las Vegas," and I like learned how to play craps, but I was like, it was just like this thing that we did, and it was like kind of fun, and like I maybe lost like $100, but it was never like.
And craps is confusing. That's a weird game to start with.
I learned. This old guy next to me like taught me how to play, and it's funny because I went back to the hotel room the first night. I was like, "Dad, I won." He goes, "Yeah, you haven't won till you got back on the plane." And sure enough, like at the airport, like there's slot machines in the airport in Vegas, and I lost the money that I'd won waiting for the airplane. But even then, it was like
Your dad is a prophet.
I lost like whatever it was, like $50, $60. Then, you start playing Hold'em and stuff, and you start playing these underground games, and then it's like the thing with gambling is.
But before we get too far, because these little details fascinate me. So you decide you're doing the Meisner thing. You get scared because it's a big deal finding the thing you're going to be the most passionate about in your life. And then you start going to the club and start playing cards. What's the transition? Because I've played poker. I play poker.
Yeah.
But I've never gone to a fucking underground game.
Yeah.
So what's the transition? Because you kind of skate over like, then I started doing this. What is the transition from playing with your dad's friends to now, hey, I need to find underground, like almost illegal games?
Some of the details are fuzzy because, again, now this is like, so I'm actually going to celebrate 12 years.
Yes, congratulations.
The 22nd will be 12 years that I quit gambling. And everything in my life is better. And, amazing. Like, I can't even believe that I'm the same person at that time. Some of the details are fuzzy, but like I just wasn't feeling good about myself.
Yeah.
And I started winning at poker, so I started feeling good. So I started feeling like, oh, I'm a winner. But then you take a beating, and again, like we were talking about, like with like when you bomb on stage, it's like all of a sudden you're like, is this who I am? I'm a guy that loses to a bunch of fucking bozos at poker. And I was like running bad, and it just really kind of crushed my like self-esteem. So then it's like you're in a hole, and now you're trying to dig yourself out of the hole.
Is this all over the course of a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple years?
No, so this is like a couple of years of like just taking beatings at poker, and I guess I was intrigued by like this sort of world of like going through a gate and like going into some like basement somewhere.
How do you find these card games?
I mean, at the time, it was like you talk to one guy and he
true.
brings you
I
another
didn't even
thing.
think about that,
It's funny, and this is how oblivious
obviously
I was.
didn't even think that. I didn't even put two and two
I remember
together.
one time I was playing. There was a house game I used to play at all the time, a couple towns over. And these games would go to 6 a.m. and they would break up. And then I would sometimes.
I've seen The Sopranos.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, like the executive game. Like that's literally what it was. And I would go home. I would sleep for like 90 minutes, and then I would go to work a double at my restaurant job. And I was commuting to the city, and I remember one time going into this, like the game broke up, and I didn't want to stop. And there was a bunch of us that were like jonesing to keep going. So they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go to this other house." And it didn't dawn on me. I'm like, why is this house all plywood on the inside of the house? Like we were playing on a sheet of plywood. The walls were dude. It was a drug den.
Yeah.
Like these were drug
Trap
dealers.
house, yeah.
These were drug dealers. This was their drug house. And I was like this clean cut kid who, like, again, in my family, it's like if you got drunk, my parents were like, oh my God, like they would have like no one in the family did drugs or drank. It was seen as such a thing, but like gambling was just kind of a thing that everybody, like,
it was the vice. It was the one vice.
My parents knew people that like lost their house, or like they lost their, like I know guys that like lost their car to their friend in a house
in a game,
and then they had to win. It's like, can you imagine? Like you have to like you explain to your wife why Tony is driving the Lexus, and then you like it's,
and then you have to try to win it back.
Yeah, and then I think the guy ended up winning it back, but then you got to go on a heater.
Heater.
Just to win your car back.
So and that actually makes sense to what you're talking about, like trying to dig out of the hole. How do the games, these house games work? Because like I was jokingly said, I've seen The Sopranos. I've played poker before, but where I've played is like Best Bet or like the Hard Rock, where you give them your money, you get the chips, and then if you're like up a little bit, you can be like, you know what, I'm done, and you just walk away. But in like The Sopranos, they play until there's one person left.
So you didn't. So, and this is how they get you. Like, this is how the devil gets you. You could, in theory, sit down, play one hand, win a huge pot, and get up and leave.
At a house game,
But you're an asshole. Like you do that, like
because everybody wants to win the fucking money back.
You got to give people a chance to win their money back. So the thing is, though, like sooner or later the rake gets everything. So the house was taking like a chip out of every pot.
Okay.
So if you play long enough, at the end of the day, the winner is the people hosting the game.
Because if you take a chip out of every pot,
now at the end of the night, it's $400 or $500 that the house got for hosting this game.
Yeah.
So really, the longer you were there, the less money it was possible for you.
Did you ever just get up? Were you ever up and you're like, all right, I'm out of here?
I won, but I also this is where it's like cosmic. Like I would lose in a way that it's impossible to lose, and that's what really fucked with my head. I once
flush on the river or something.
No, I flushed. I hate even telling these stories. I flopped the nut straight with a draw to straight flush, and I lost to a pair. I lost all my chips to a pair
because you just didn't get
because the board went 10, 10, 10. And so now the guy has a full
house. Oh
and
my god!
The money
and
the money got in. And then like one time there was like famous.
And you're throwing in money because you're like, oh, I'm gonna slow place this asshole.
I remember one time this dealer. It's funny. He was dealing cards. Turns out later he got busted for this huge drug deal. I was like, wait a minute, I know him. There's like pictures in the paper. And the funny thing is, he was like the sweetest guy. They would kind of tease him. You would never think he was like a tough guy. And so if the card hits the floor, it's dead, right?
Yeah.
So I was chasing a flush, which you're not supposed to do.
Don't ever chase out there,
I'd play like a maniac. I was a great player, but I was like a maniac.
Yeah.
And
because if you get that flush, you're like, fucking, I knew it.
I'm chasing a flush, and the dealer deals out my flush card, and to be funny, he throws the card, and it bounces off the table and bounces on the floor.
No,
that's my flush card,
no.
and everyone saw it. So now they got to like reshuffle and redeal that card, and of course the flush doesn't come again, and I lose all my money. But like that's the kind of stuff like that it's like literally could happens in a movie.
Yeah,
and people would like laugh.
Where it hits the table and falls.
Other poker players would feel bad about how bad I ran in these games. So
because they'd see you just got like a bad draw or something, and they'd be like, "What?"
It's also possible. Sometimes I think that I was cheated. Like it's also possible that these guys were cheating in some of these games.
They are shady people.
Sometimes I think that like I probably played in games where I got like hustled. I've always been interested in like con artists and like scammers and carnies and stuff like that. So I'm almost like, you know what? If you conned me, I kind of laugh about it because it's like, you got me. I'm interested in how the con is done, so I'm like it's almost like so. Sometimes I'm like, some of these games I had to have been cheated.
But I wanted to, because before we get too far down this rabbit hole, because you talked about doing the Meisner, getting into acting, how did you transition into doing stand-up as well?
So my whole life, people told me you should do stand-up, and I never wanted to do it. And I actually kind of
was acting or stand-up more prevalent when people were like, "Oh, you should try doing this"?
No, I always was interested in acting. Stand-up, when I was a little kid, I would like watch it.
Yeah.
Back then, it's so funny how prevalent it is in the culture now, where people like Europeans are like coming to America to go to comedy clubs. Like when I was a kid, you had to like stay up late and like find it.
I used to record Comedy Central Presents on VHS.
I'm talking about even before there was a Comedy Central. I'm talking about, I guess it was like Evening at the Improv.
Yeah.
So I remember I remember Elaine Boozer, Fred Stoller. I remember Dennis Wolfberg. I remember their sets.
Yeah.
I remember Sam Kinison when he came on the scene, and I didn't understand what this thing was. But I was like interested in it, but then that kind of went away for a while. And people would tell, like my friends would tell me, like you should be. I was always the funniest person, and it's funny because I started taking improv classes at the Pit, and this guy Randy Perlstein, who's really a fascinating guy. He like co-wrote Cabin Fever with Eli Roth.
Oh, really?
He's in the Chappelle Show. He's like one of the white guys in the Chappelle Show. He was in my improv class, and it turned out he just like took it as a dare because he'd already had a career in Hollywood. And he said to me one time, he goes, "Do you think you're going to be the only funny person in an improv class?" Like I was just used to being the funny guy. I didn't know how to handle being in a room full of people that wanted to be comedians. So I kind of shut down a little bit.
That makes sense. That's moving to New York. We're all the funniest person where we're from.
He used to host the mic at the Pit.
Yeah.
And he would tell me to come, and I went one time.
Do you think you're going to be the funniest person?
So I sat and I watched the mic, and I was too scared to get up. And after the mic, he comes up to me and goes, "You see, that was easy. You could do that." And even then, it took me a
wow, that's
long,
actually really cool that he was that motivating.
He saw that in me, and it took me years to figure this out. I think what happened was, I'm naturally funny. Like it was never hard for me to be funny.
Yeah.
So I never thought being funny was a particularly interesting thing about me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you never saw it as a skill because it just came natural.
It was never like, oh, I'm going to work hard to be a funny guy.
Trust me, man. I played Division I football. I saw those kind of athletes too.
Yeah,
they just walk in eating McDonald's and you're like, fuck you.
Yeah, but the thing what I always say too, it's like, I would say this to younger comics. It's like, speaking of athletics, listen, I could do layups all day long. I'm never going to be Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a natural ability, and then on top of that, you have to do
the work. So
I just never I don't know if it was the lifestyle. I didn't like being alone. I didn't know what it was. So I was doing acting for a while, but it was very frustrating. Like literally, people were like, "Oh my God, you're going to email me and we're going to talk." Like big time casting directors, playwrights, movie directors, and then nothing ever came. I got so frustrated. And when you're an actor, it's always like, do I go to LA or do I go to New York? Do I do plays or do I? And, people would send stuff my way and I wouldn't get it. And like people would be like, oh, you should audition for this. And I wouldn't hear anything. And it was just really, and while this is happening, I'm becoming a worse and worse gambler.
Okay.
And just really.
So it's all happening at the same time.
Yeah. So it's like my self-worth, my value, my lack of direction, all this stuff is
Are you becoming a worse gambler or are you just losing more money?
So what happened was, I started going to the casino. And again, this is like
Atlantic City.
Started going to Atlantic City, and I grew up going to the shore. We had a shore house, which is 40 minutes from Atlantic City.
Okay.
So when we were, 21, 22 years old, we could be sitting me and my buddies could be sitting on the porch of my shore house and be like, dude, let's go to AC. We could be there before 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it became an easy thing to do in the summer. That's different when you're like in North Jersey or in New York City, and you're like, let's go to Atlantic City and drive 2.5 hours each way to get there, and then knowing that I have to work a double the next day, like that's what
you
know.
Just
like,
want to play.
You're becoming like a degenerate gambler. So I started going to AC, and there in AC I could be like anonymous, and I started playing poker. And again, I'm just getting tired of beats, and I would win. I would win too. Like you don't keep doing a thing, I don't think, if you don't have some highs from it. So I would win a little bit. So I just decided to start playing blackjack because I got so tired of poker. And I won at blackjack.
Yeah.
And the thing with blackjack is it's like heroin. You're either going to die or your life is going to turn around. But because it's so extreme, it's so fast, and it's so what happened with blackjack was I started winning bigger than I've ever could imagine.
Yeah.
So
do you have a proclivity for blackjack, or are you just getting lucky? Or
I started going Rain Man. Like I started like sitting there and like hyper focusing. I felt like I finally found. Like I would literally.
This is like when you found acting. You're like, I found my game.
I would play for 15 hours straight. I would like.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I started playing in the high limit room pretty quickly. It's like $100 minimum table. Dude, I'm making $200 a night waiting tables, and I'm playing $100 a hand blackjack. And when you're this is my arrogance. When you're out in like with the scrubs in the main part of the casino and playing $10, $20 blackjack, people are getting up and they're sitting down in the middle. You're dealing. People are eating at the table. It's like you go in like
savages.
You go in the pit and it's like you can lock in the table and it's just you versus the dealer. Big Poppy, the baseball player,
yeah, David Ortiz.
They were like Poppy's coming and they would set up a table for him.
So it's just you and the dealer playing like $200.
So I would
hands.
play heads up versus the dealer, and it was like. And what happens is in those games they lock the shoe, which means the first once they deal one card, no one can sit down at the table.
Okay.
So you go there, you play one hand, they lock the shoe. Now I can get up and go to the bathroom. I can go to the buffet, and the dealer would just wait for me to come back to the table. But what I knew when I sat down, it's just me and him, and it's like it would go so fast,
mano y mano,
and it was so fast and so intense.
How much are you going back there with?
So it started with I literally got
so
down.
So like you're in the regular rooms, you make a bunch of money, and then they're like, "Hey, do you want to come back to the private room?"
I was down to like I swear I might be remembering some of this, but I swear this is how it happened. I was down to like $30.
Yeah.
I had to borrow money from my cousin because like I had all my, my bills were like automatic in my checking account. Like if my bills went through, my checking account was going to bounce.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough money in my checking account.
Oh, we're aware of that situation.
To cover that situation. And I was always like, I wasn't like, I still paid my bills. I would lose at a house game, go to the ATM and pay the money. I thought I was like a big shot because I wasn't, these guys would like disappear when they lost.
Yeah.
And they'd be like running around town. Like I always like paid my debts, whatever. So that made me think I wasn't like a degenerate gambler.
Yeah, that's
I'm like,
true,
I'm not
yeah.
one of these, and I'm also like, I'm not one of these pieces of shit who's drunk at the blackjack table.
And as an alcoholic, it's like I still go to work every day.
I'm here to work. And the funny thing is, I realized later was like, oh, that drunk guy at the blackjack table woke up the next morning and had to like piece together what happened. Me, I had vivid recall of everything that I did. And so I never drank at the table. I would drink, I would get like a cappuccino and give the girl $50 tip for bringing me a cappuccino.
But how do you get the money?
So I borrowed $300 from my cousin, also named Peter Guarraci, to just make so I have money in my account.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to tell this story. So I'm working in a restaurant. I would literally go to AC, drive 2.5 hours, go back to Elizabeth to my grandmother's house because I couldn't afford an apartment, sleep for 90 minutes, and then go work my restaurant job.
Yeah.
So this restaurant is a little tiny restaurant on the Upper East Side, and there was a curtain that went into the kitchen, and there was a trap door in the kitchen. The place was so tiny that there was a trap door that led to the prep kitchen downstairs. So they would open the trap door and run downstairs.
Yeah.
So the trap door basically...
Is it a ladder or stairs?
It was stairs going down into the basement. But it was like a plexiglass door that weighed like 80 pounds. You had to like muscle up. So... one night, it's me and another guy. It's so slow that it was just two guys working this tiny restaurant. We had no busser, no nobody. We were doing everything. So we're bussing tables. It's the end of the night. And I am bussing a bunch of tables, and I push the plates through the curtain to open the curtain to go into the kitchen. Now, they had a hamper for like the dirty napkins. If the hamper was behind the curtain, that meant don't come into the kitchen. The trap door is open. I push through the curtain. By the time I feel the hamper, I'm falling through the trap door. I fell 10 feet down into the basement. God. If you saw the way I felt, so the stairs are going this way.
Yeah.
I came in this way. I midair rotated and landed in the opposite direction, sitting with my legs in front of me.
So you're sitting on the chair?
No,
stairs.
Sitting on the concrete floor.
Oh, with your legs in front of you?
I didn't touch the stairs at all.
Oh, my God.
I remember I was like, my first thought was like, wiggle your fingers and toes.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I yelled up, the poor cooks, this guy, the Spanish cook was like looking down. He's like looking like he thought I was dead.
Yeah.
And
10 feet's a far fall.
The funny thing is, we were known for our bolognese sauce, this restaurant. So everybody would order the bolognese. I remember I literally, all the plates went flying. And I found out later that like all the plates kind of like crashed on my head and broke on my head.
Oh, shit.
So they looked down and they saw bolognese. And they thought it was brains. They were looking down on my bare skull and just seeing brains everywhere. And I had to be like, no, I'm okay. And they're like, what? They couldn't believe that So they put me on a backer board, took me to the hospital. Nothing. There was nothing wrong with me. I had no concussion, no broken bones, nothing. I had like a slight bruise where I must have hit a step, but I did like a week of physical therapy. I was fine.
That's awesome.
So 2 days I'm like laying at home. And
they obviously were like, take your time.
So I
come back when you
decide
can come back.
To go to Atlantic City. And
you were such an addict.
So I had a couple $100 to my name because I had now it'd been a couple weeks that I didn't gamble.
Yeah.
So I like waited for a few paychecks. Because what I would do was, and this is the evil of gambling, I would lose, but I knew I was getting another paycheck the next week.
Yeah.
So I would tell myself, well, I'm only losing my money, and I can always win it back. And
you're paying all your bills, and you're still going to work.
Yeah. People are probably wondering, like, why is Peter living with his grandma's house at 30 years old and always talking about New York City and like not doing anything? And I was probably miserable to be around, but I justified that I was like, I was within my means.
Well, you're saving a lot of money living at grandma's.
Well, but all the money was gone.
But that's what I'm saying is you're able to gamble with like $1,500 to $2,000 a month because you're not paying rent.
So I go down to AC. I'm down to my last $30.
And this is after the trapdoor?
This is after the trapdoor. This is like I'm off of work because I'm injured.
Because you fell through a trapdoor.
And I turned $30 into like $1,500.
Get the fuck out of here!
And I went on and then
you were just playing blackjack with the cretins
in the regular with the fucking riffraff. And I go back like a week later, and then I win like another $5,000.
And that's when you can go back to the private room.
So then I started playing in the high limit games, and then for months I was unstoppable. So I would go there, I'd play heads up, and I had one day I think I won 18,000, I lost 15,000, and then I won the 15,000 again.
Get out of here.
In one shot. I remember I brought my buddy down there. We had a mancation, and he was working at the restaurant that I was working at. And I literally sat down at the blackjack table, and I told the dealer, I was like, I'm going to win $3,000, and I'm going to win $1,000 for my buddy. And the dealer's like, are you out of your – like, what an asshole you are. And I won exactly that amount of money, and we got up.
Are you still working at the restaurant at this point?
Still waiting tables, still doing all that stuff.
So at any point – this is something that interests me because I got a settlement from getting hit by a car when I was on a bicycle, and I like quit all my jobs. I was like, I'm rich. It was only $26,000, but I was like, I'm the wealthiest person alive right now because I was 24 at the time. 24. So when you are winning like 15 grand or 18 grand or even 5 grand, does any part of your brain go like, this is it, like I'm quitting, or had you been playing?
I was like waiting tables like 3 days a week. I was already being pretty
loose with it,
and I would So what I started to do was I started to hear that, you got to pay taxes on your winnings. So there was a deli across the street that we were very close to. And so one way that
is this at AC or
no,
back
this
home?
is back in North Jersey. And so I asked the lady to save all the scratch offs that people throw away because you can write off your winnings versus your losses. So this is a thing that other gamblers do where they would collect their loss receipts to say, well, I won 30,000, but I also lost 20,000. So I'm only going to pay taxes on 10 grand.
Yeah.
So my big idea, because I think at a certain point I was up $40,000 or $60,000, and I was like keeping the money in my sock drawer. I was like having my brain was like racing. I could never sleep really. I was having I literally would hit the pillow and I would sleep and wake up, and it was like I didn't rest at all because my brain was just going 100 miles an hour the whole time. And so now I'm like, how am I going to hide the money from the IRS? I'm collecting a box of scratch off cards because my big idea is I'm gonna
say you lost.
Say that I lost all this money. So this lady's literally collecting these scratch offs for me. I had a box in a closet, and this is like
I spent $20,000 on scratchers and didn't win a single thing.
This is like 4 or 5 months. I'm bringing people from work. I'm getting suites in the Borgata. I'm getting steak dinner.
Comps.
I'm getting steak dinners. I got I have a red members only jacket that I bought in the casinos gift shop. I have
is the Atlantic City the casinos there? Are they nice? Because everyone always trashes it. But
so Atlantic City was always just kind of this trashy little dinky town, and they would always every once in a while they would try to do a nice casino. So the Borgata is the nice one. And so I didn't want to go to the regular casinos because it was depressing. You'd see these old people, you knew they didn't have any money. You go to the Borgata, everyone's kind of dressed up. There's
it's
nightclubs.
a fun time.
There's actually a comedy club at the Borgata. Big. So you would see people dressed up because we would go out there. We would go Monday night. I think was a big night at the Borgata. So I would take people down. We'd go clubbing at the Borgata, and then they would go to sleep, and I would stay up all night. I remember bringing 15 friends from New York, all my restaurant friends.
And when you show up, are they like, hey, Peter?
No, I mean it's not like that. I mean, it's such a huge place. But at one point, I got a marker.
Yeah.
So this is where
explain what a marker is.
This is how they get you, kids. So you go down there with your money, and this is what a pervasive addiction gambling is. You go down with your money, and you lose your money, and you go home. And I remember being in my 20s because again, me and my buddies would go down. It was not a big deal. It was not something that it was just a fun thing.
Yeah.
It was like a night out, And I remember being in my 20s being like, who goes to the ATM in a casino? How bad you got to be? So I started going to the ATM.
Fast forward a few years.
So then I go. They have cash advances on your credit card where you basically pay $300 to get $2,000 on your credit card, but that interest is compounded daily.
Yeah.
So it's 40% interest on your credit card to get the money. But the thing is, if I would lose the $2,000 from my credit card, I would win it to put it back. So what kept me going is I was kind of at an equilibrium. So I was never losing huge and I was never winning huge until I went on this run.
Yeah.
But so even when I lost, I would always kind of, I would be sort of okay. I never was arrested. I never had bookies coming. But by the way, sports betting, when I was walking around the Borgata, broke, being why is this my life? Waiting for the ATM to reset after 24 hours so I could take more money out of the ATM. I would go, dude, what kind of maniac bets on football? You have to be a real, because I would see kids that were nits at the poker table. You couldn't get $1 out of them. And then you'd be like, hey, where's Johnny? They're like, oh, he lost 10 grand on the Giants, so he's hiding. I'm like, the kid that wouldn't bet with, pocket aces for $20 is because they would borrow the money. They would take money from the bookie.
The loan sharks and the bookies, baby.
I never dealt with bookies. I'd never dealt with loan sharks. Thank God I'd never had to deal with any of that stuff because I just never for me the fun is like. This is like my ADD. It's like I wanted to sit at a table and just be like Rain Man and just like be playing this game and trying to figure out this game. So yeah, I ended up running up to like 40,000. I was bringing friends down. What
happened with the marker? Your first marker?
Oh, so the marker. So what happens is you talk to some guy at the casino. There was these like old timers there.
Yeah.
So I talked to one old timer and he goes, "Oh, I don't park in the parking lot." He was like, "You might get robbed there." He's like, "You got to do valet." So now I'm getting valet when I show up at the hotel. And I'm getting, I'm checking into my hotel room and immediately I'm getting rooms, all this stuff. So then some other old timer one time, he goes, oh yeah, he's like, you got a marker. I go, what's a marker? He goes, a marker is like, they just give you the money. So he's like, you think I want to come down here with $30,000 in my pocket? And he's like, you get robbed. He's like, they send me a limo, they bring me down here and they give me a marker. So then I see the pit boss and I go, hey, can I get a marker? So a marker is...
It's a line of credit.
It's a line of credit from the casino that's interest free for a certain amount of time. So like if you got $5,000 or less, it was 30 days. If you got $5,100, it was 45 days to pay the money back. So I would get $5,100 marker.
Would.
And I remember.
And how do they do it from your reputation at the casino, or is it based off of your credit score?
He went on a computer, put my name in. And looked at my history and goes, you're a good little gambler, huh? And so he gave me
So it's based off of your credit in the casino.
Yeah. So then it was like
a good little gambler.
So then I'm losing and then having to pay back, and then I'm driving back to the casino to pay the marker off, and then getting another marker.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was,
God, that sounds like a horrible vicious cycle.
Not to go backwards. So I was winning for months. I was untouchable, and Remember, I fell down the trapdoor. And there's a movie called Fearless with Jeff Bridges.
I've never seen it.
He survives a plane crash, and it makes him nuts because he walked away from a thing that should have killed him.
Yeah.
I think falling through the trapdoor made me more nuts than I already was. Because I was like, and then I discovered
Especially
Blackjack.
To fall and then be fine.
And then I discovered Blackjack, and I'm like, oh my God, God is paying me back for all the bad beats I ever took in poker, all the times stupid shit happened at the poker table. Now I'm winning, and I'm unstoppable, and everything is amazing, and my life is incredible. And then I'm still commuting back to Jersey every night. So I'm driving back from New York City at like 1 a.m. I used to live in Elizabeth's right next to the Newark Airport.
Yeah.
So you would drive on the highway and you would pass the Newark Airport. So I'm driving down. I see the airport, and a guy hits me going 70 miles an hour.
Oh, Jesus.
And he hits me like corner to corner. So it's not like a head-on collision. It propels me into the wall.
Oh my God.
So I have a split second where I'm heading towards like the Jersey barrier, the concrete barriers, and I have like a second where I have to like catch myself and not fucking get into this major crash. So I was able to stop in the shoulder of the highway. This old guy, he stops, it kills me to this day. He gets out of his car and he looks at his bumper first.
Wow.
And I'm like, you motherfucker, you could have killed, like, by all rights, I should have hit the median going 70 miles an hour. And
so he actually clipped you?
He clipped me, but we're both going so fast that it like sends
just
me
flip the
like I'm gonna like turn and go into the wall, and I'm able to just really quickly catch myself. That was scarier than falling through the trapdoor, because falling through the trapdoor, it was so fast and there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
This was like I had a second where I'm like, I have to save myself from certain death. So we exchange information. I go back home. I sleep it off. By the way, like, I'm living with my grandmother and like my gangster uncle at this time, and I tell him about the accident, and he goes, "Wait a minute. He goes, "How do you not pretend that you're in a coma? Like, what do you?" He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You fell at work and you didn't. You
said I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
And now you get hit by another guy." He goes, "You should be like in a coma right now." And then they're going to come to the hospital, and the doctor's going to say, if you can hear me, squeeze my finger. And you just go, ah. And I just didn't have it in me to, like, scam. Even though
Put your acting skills to use, Peter.
He's like, what kind of stupid? He's like, what? You're so stupid. He's like,
what kind of stupid does this?
So we do whatever the insurance, and insurance pays to fix my car, whatever. But what ended up happening was I got like unstuck in time. So whatever shift in the universe that happened from me walking away from the one accident went back to normal.
Reversed, yeah.
It's like there's an episode of The Twilight Zone where I think it's Darren McGavin. He flips a coin and it lands on its side, and he becomes psychic. Like he could read people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And it drives him crazy. And then at the end of the episode, he flips a coin and it lands flat, and the power goes away. So I feel like I would like kind of live that episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it's The Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
Yeah. So
once you fall asleep all the way, it's
once
over.
Once that accident happened, now I couldn't win to save my life.
No.
Yeah.
Did you put two and two together? Or
No,
were
at
you...
the time I didn't know what was happening,
Yeah.
obviously. But
So are you going and getting markers and just getting beat up?
So the interesting thing about gambling is when you start losing, you can't really go back to playing $10 hands of blackjack anymore. So now I'm losing all of the money that I had like in my sock. All this money that I was gonna have to hide from the IRS. I lose all.
I forgot about that.
I lose all this money, and
you have like $60,000 in a drawer.
And then back to credit card debt, back to taking all, like losing every jack.
So even after you lose that the big pot that you had in your drawer, your sock drawer, that like 50-50 whatever it was, 30. What'd you say it was? 30,000, 50,000?
I don't even remember.
But
it might have been 50,000. It might have been 30,000.
After losing that,
I'm still going.
Okay.
Because I want to win. Because I've done it before.
Yeah.
I want to win it again.
Yeah, you won 15 grand in a day after losing, or you won 18
I
grand
went up
after
18,
losing 50.
down
yeah.
15, and then up 18.
Yeah.
Again. So I've done it.
So
And
you're like, I can do this.
My little brother, because he would come with me sometimes and watch me play, and he goes, if only you could not lose $2,000 when you sit down. Imagine how much money, because that's what I would do. Like I would immediately, because it would make me
get
hyper.
A rhythm for that.
Well, it would make me hyper. I always like. I said one time, I said, I don't think I'm addicted to blackjack. I think I'm addicted to making my life as difficult as possible.
You're addicted to chaos.
But controlling and being like hyper focused and like being able to focus on one thing and just literally like, I'm going to get out of this mess.
Well, and I mean, I think that has a lot to do with us working in restaurants too, is like, we're in control, like no matter how chaotic it gets.
I would always like, I end up becoming a manager. I turned my life around. I quit gambling.
But take us through, so you lose all that money, you go back into credit card debt. What is the catalyst where you're like, I'm out, I can't?
So it got really bad. Like one time, I think I told you, like I had to beg for $10 to get gas money.
So let's talk.
I wanted that to be my bottom. Like you would think that's your bottom. I'm literally.
You literally told me you're like, that's going to be at the end. And
it's close to the end. Yeah. I go to AC on E, and I'm like, I was so fiending that I had to get to the casino.
How long is this after the accident, the second accident?
This is like now a couple months. This is like a few
you've
months
like
happening.
Been losing.
So
you get to Atlantic City on E.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll get gas when I get out. And I get out of the casino. I can't get any money out of the bank. I got nothing. So now I have no way to get. I need to get at least 40 miles to my sister's house.
Yeah.
So that I can borrow money from her to get the rest of the way home. And I'm in the gas station and I'm asking the guy. He's like literally like won't even talk to me. And then I'm going up to cars asking them for gas money. And I see a guy. He's got a casino jacket on, so he clearly knows. And I said, hey man, I just need $10 to put gas in. And he gives me the $10. And this is I had acting business cards made that had my headshot on them.
Yeah, you did.
Because I was like, oh, look at me, I'm Peter Guarraci. So my idea was, I'm like, sir, look, this is my card. I was like, send me your address, and I'll send you the money. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. He goes, just help someone else out along the road. I'm driving.
Stop gambling, you asshole.
Well, yeah, that's what he probably seen it. Dude, I give the $10 to the gas station attendant, and he goes, oh, his demeanor changes, and he gives me the gas. He goes, because the gas station attendant said to me, he goes, give me your driver's license, and I'll give you $10. And I'm like, I can't give him my driver's license.
Just in case anything happens on the way home.
So then I give him the $10 that the guy gave to me, and he's all smiles, and he goes, you know what a stack of driver's licenses I have by the register? From all the degenerates that literally they're begging for fucking gas money.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wish that was my rock bottom story, because that's a way that you should like be, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I got to change my life.
Yeah.
I still gambled for a few more months. I had a great aunt that I was taking care of who gave me some money, and I started like going into that money to pay off my markers. And then it kind of dawned on me, because I was always like a very honest person. I was always a straight shooter, and I'm like, look at what I've become.
Yeah.
Like I really literally became everything that I hated. And it dawned on me, like finally, because again, for the first time now I'm like taking money that was given to me by someone else, and I'm gambling it away. It's not me, like, working.
It's not money you earned.
I'm not justifying it. They're like, oh, I'll go back to work, and next week I'll get another
Yeah.
paycheck, and I'll win it back, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just really I always say with gambling, it's like, you have to be sick of it. And I think what really happened was I didn't bottom out. I still had access to more money. I could have kept hustling. And I'm really grateful because I see this a lot with, we work in two industries, restaurants and comedy, and where there's a lot of active addicts.
Yeah,
a lot of addicts who just kind of pass. And I could have spent the rest of my life losing $500 and then winning 1,000 and then losing 1,000 and then winning 2,000 and then just going through life just like miserable, and it's always someone else's fault, and that guy doesn't deserve that. I should have got that thing.
Why did he hit and I should have stayed? Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful that I bottomed out in the way that I just got so disgusted. I'm like, how is this my life? Like, how am I walking around at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in the Borgata waiting for the ATMs to reset so I can take more money out? Like, I can't believe I've become this person, and that's what really did it. And that's how I stopped.
Wow.
Gambling. Yeah.
Dude, and now you got, what, 12 years?
12 years. 12 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then the funny thing is, my favorite comics are the ones that died tragic. Like, I love Mitch.
Yeah.
I love Artie Lang. I love
Mitch.
Patrice. And it's like, the funny thing about me, I would hear Artie Lang's story because Artie Lang is a degenerate gambler. Or like Norm was a big gambler. Fucking Norm is probably my hero of all time. And they would always talk about gambling and comedy. I was so fucked up that I couldn't even be a comedian until I stopped gambling. And I always wonder, I'm like, why couldn't I be one of these guys who's like, guys go on stage drunk? Yeah. And I was so messed up that I couldn't even get the courage to go on stage until I stopped gambling. So what happened was I was kind of dicking around with acting, but not really doing any. I said I was an actor, but I wasn't really doing anything. And then I quit gambling, and like immediately my life started getting better.
Now, when you decide to quit gambling, are you like immediately like going to like meetings, or are you going to finding people, or like how does one just be like, all right, I'm done?
Look, you're not really supposed to talk about
programs. I know, but
I do go to meetings, and it's been 12 years of going to meetings, and I respect the program, so I don't really want to talk the details.
No,
of it.
I understand
but
that.
The thing that really, like, the thing that changed my life was that. The thing that changed my life was being around other people who I thought I was so special, and I thought I was so unique, and then I go to this place of strangers, and I say I did all this stuff, and I'm like waiting for them to like punish me.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for them to be like, you're a piece of shit, how the fuck? And they come up to me and they go, oh, you sound just like me.
Yeah.
And I go, well, what? I'm special. Like, I'm unique. How could it be that anyone else is like me? And that's what really, like, I don't know why it works. It's like a mystical, magical thing. And like, I don't try to understand it too much. But for some reason, talking to other strangers who've been through what you've been through is the cure for this.
Well, and the only reason like I said, I don't mean to pry on it or push on it, but the only reason I like to bring it up is because a lot of times I'll have people on, myself included, where I talk about getting sober, where I talk about quitting drinking and stuff. And for people who listen, because I will get DMs and stuff like, oh, like I got sober and I started listening to your podcast and things like that. I want people to know it's not like a magic switch that I flipped. No. It's not like a pill that like there's a lot of fucking work that was involved.
Every day.
Yeah.
And again, I look back and like where I was a year into quitting gambling, where when I celebrated 10 years and now I'm going to celebrate 12 years, it's like life, like your life doesn't all of a sudden get amazing.
Yeah.
But what happens is your thinking starts to become clearer, and things that used to set you off don't set you off anymore, and you're able to talk to people. And my thing was, and this was true, I felt this in acting school. I felt like such a fraud. And this is so funny. Like, I was this Italian, like, Jersey kid commuting to the city every day to take acting classes at one of the most prestigious acting schools in the country. I had like stars in my class, and there was people that, like, you know, I would go to Piper Parabo's apartment in the East Village and like rehearse with her, and she was like rehearsing for a Broadway play, and I just didn't I felt like I didn't belong. And there was kids that were like living in Williamsburg and like being cool, and I was like this fucking like blue collar,
back to Elizabeth.
Yeah, going back to Elizabeth every day. So I just didn't feel like I belonged. And then I had like this acting teacher who, you know, trained Sam Rockwell and Philip Seymour Hoffman and all these people telling me that I was talented, and I was so insecure, and I didn't believe in myself. And it took a long time to get over that and build up my confidence. And I started doing stand-up. And this is the funny thing, and this is how crazy. Again, you have to be insane to do any of this stuff. I was so frustrated with acting. I'm like, oh, like, what do you do? Nothing works out. I was like, how do I just focus my energy? I just want to focus on one thing. I don't want to do a million different things.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I was like, because I was doing like a play with like 13 people, like in a black box, and like carrying my costume. Like I was doing like little stuff like that. But again, it would not, no job would ever lead to the next thing.
Yeah.
I never felt like I had any momentum. And I remember I got to tell this story to David Tell, and he was like, he doesn't like compliments. I was carrying my costume every day to Long Island City to do Three Sisters, like 3-hour play, and I go to the cellar just to watch. And at this point, I haven't really been paying attention to comedy a long time. I'm not like in any kind of scene. I don't know what's going on. Like I'm not watching Comedy Central. I just decided to go to the cellar, and he gets on stage. Like he doesn't even take his messenger bag off, and he's got like a Coke from 7-Eleven, and for 15 minutes he just talks to the audience, and it was magical. And I was like, that's the life for me. Like that's what I want to do. And I realized with stand-up, like it's just you. It's you writing, it's you performing. And silly me, I thought like, oh, I'm funny. I'll just get up on stage and I'll be funny. And then you learn how stand-up works, especially in New York. And like funny is like number 7 on the list.
Yeah.
So then you got to learn the politics and all the bullshit, whatever. But like, it's still like I had to have the confidence to do it, and no regrets. Like it's been amazing. You know, I haven't arrived, and I told you I was ready to quit 2 weeks ago. But
well, you've been doing some acting too. You were just on Law and Order.
So so what happened? We met at the Comedy Shop.
Yeah,
is that right?
yeah.
So pandemic happens. Before the pandemic, I was like featuring and like I wasn't getting a lot of love in New York City, but I was doing like Harlem bar shows during the week, and then I was like emceeing in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I was like, but I really think like that it was like a really good training for comedy. Because I was like, right away I was kind of used to like very different audiences, different styles of comedy.
Those loud audiences up in Harlem.
Well, so you know, you do Harlem Nights, and like people are like, oh, there's a comedy show, and they would turn back to their conversation. So you had to like learn how to get their attention. And then I would go to Pennsylvania, and I remember the feature being like, yo, you're coming in real hot, because I was like attacking the audience. And then I learned like, oh no, when you're at a show in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, those people are like happy to be there.
Yeah, they want to listen.
And you can spend time like getting to know, like you don't have to like attack them.
Look at you with your stupid ass hat. And
So,
you're like, whoa.
So, but I really feel like that's how I learned to be a comic.
Yeah.
You know, and being able to do like, you can kind of put me in kind of whatever situation, and I'll figure it out. But the pandemic happens, everything kind of goes away. And again, I'm doing like little things here and there, but I'm like, this is like, it's kind of, is it over? Is the world coming to an end? And then pandemic ends, and through a couple of things, I ended up getting offered to run the Comedy Shop, which I never wanted to run a comedy club. It was never something that I thought about. I had some friends who were like, dude, you should do this thing. And I'm like, what? And because of my background in managing, just to skip over it, like once I quit gambling, I also became a manager.
Okay, at the
I kind of
restaurant,
like was able to turn my life around. There's a lot of good things that were happening. Like I became more of an adult. Is really what happened. So because I had experience in managing restaurants and in comedy, owner Eddie of the Comedy Shop approached me to run the Comedy Shop. So I was there, and I didn't want to do it, and it ended up being a great experience for me.
Yeah.
I ended up, getting a lot of stage time, meeting a lot of people, networking. Also, like I created those open mics.
Yeah.
I feel like proud of like creating community and stuff. So
the New Joke Wednesday was like the biggest mic in the city for a while.
Yeah. So I knew that if I focused on stand-up, that acting would come eventually.
Yeah.
Because, Ray Romano is a comic, and he's a sitcom.
Yeah.
Like a lot. And I always liked, like Scorsese always puts comics in his movies, like
Yeah.
in serious roles. And I always say, like, I don't want to just be like the funny guy on the sitcom. I want to play like real stuff. So I had a feeling that if I got good at stand-up, sooner or later, someone would notice.
Yeah.
So my agent, which woman became my agent, she was sitting at the bar one day. She just came in and hung out at the bar with another friend of hers, and they started talking to the bartender, and the bartender was like, oh, you should talk to Peter. And she's like, oh, this place is so cute. I want to bring clients here. And I'm like, well, I'm an actor. I need an agent. And she goes, oh, yeah, sure. We should talk. And I was like, it was like.
You've talked about this before,
I've so many times, and I said, well, I'm about to close this show. Do you want to come see me do stand-up? And she goes, yeah. She comes in, she watches me. I get off stage, and she goes, I'm going to sign you. And I go, she sent me the contract. I'm like, this is not going to work out.
This is bullshit.
She's never going to, I'm like, if she doesn't respond to the email immediately, I'm already like in my head being like, it's never going to work out.
Yeah.
So negative. So like always, I'm such a miserable sometimes. I talked about this. It's like, I still like have a real problem with just being grateful for all the things that have worked out in my life. But, she ends up signing me, and 3 weeks later, I booked Law and Order. And
I remember when you booked that.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was like it came out of nowhere. It was my second audition. I think it was my first real audition because I think the first one was some like weird thing. And she's like, "Oh, Law and Order wants to see you," and they just booked me. And it was like
Dock worker, baby.
the episode ran on my 10th anniversary.
What?
That's the actual day that the episode ran. And since then I haven't booked anything. I've come close to stuff, and I've been auditioning for every show in New York, like all these movies. It's funny when you see the movie that you auditioned for, like the trailer comes out, and you're like, motherfucker. Or I've auditioned for a couple commercials and not gotten them, and then like now you turn on Hulu and that commercial runs on Hulu, and like you're.
Have you ever seen? This is something interesting, and we got to wap up. We got to have you back because we still have to talk about Europe,
there's
getting
so much
mugged, carnies. But this fascinates me. Do you ever, as a struggling actor, someone who's getting into acting, do you ever go out for a role, you don't get it, then you see the trailer and you go, "Thank God, that movie looks like a piece of shit."
No, but I have watched
because I assume a paycheck's a paycheck, so it doesn't really matter.
At this point, I'll do anything. But I have watched and been like, "Oh, that guy is 20 years older than me."
Yeah.
A lot of times I just go out for like white guy, or like bald guy, or like I went out for a thing and it was like a serious regular, but it like I saw who ended up getting cast, and it was literally like a Latino gay guy with one leg, and I was like, I'm not what they're looking like. They sent out kind of a broad whatever.
Yeah,
a couple of them like I did one where I did an audition in Sicilian. And that was really cool, and I really thought I nailed it, and then I didn't. The guy is supposed to be an Italian guy in 1960s East Harlem, and I go, listen, this is a Sicilian guy. This guy's not speaking proper Italian.
Yeah.
Like this is my grandfather when he first came to America, and the casting director goes, "Oh, do you want to do it in Sicilian?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love to." And so I did that, and I felt really good about it. And then they're like, "Well, we went in a different direction," and that hasn't premiered yet, so I don't know who they went with. But I'm curious to see what they did with that. So.
Too bad The Sopranos isn't still on the air. You'd have like every fucking role.
I mean, I kind of grew up around those guys, so sometimes I'm like, I love the show, and James Gandolfini is like, again, one of my heroes. But like, I actually did something with one of the Sopranos actors. Like we shot like a little like sketch thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he apparently told the producer like, who is this kid? Like he should have been on the Sopranos. And like to me, like I felt like $1 million.
Yeah,
that's like an unbelievable compliment,
dude. This was so much fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, you got to come back on. We still have so many stories to get to. Plug everything one more time though.
So I'm Peter Guarraci. I'm the Guarraci on Instagram. You probably just find me on Instagram. I post all my show stuff. I'm going to have a monthly show in Elizabeth, New Jersey at the City Tavern, which is where I'm from. But then I'm always, doing spots, doing shows. Hopefully you'll see me on TV soon, too.
Hell yeah. We'll tag everything in the show notes. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. At BrennanTComedy.com, or excuse me, at BrennanTComedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Peace.
Boom.